Here we are, it's the last Sunday in August, which means that kids all across the country are going to start going back to school. Or maybe you already did you already go back to school already? Okay. So it's not just the kids that are going back to school, it's also the teachers that are going back to school. And I think many of you know I used to be a teacher. I was a high school English teacher for 12 years. And during the years that I was a teacher, I would hear all the time, "Oh, you teachers are so lucky. You get a winter break, and you get a spring break, and you get the whole summer off. I wish I could get the whole summer off." Okay? But really, if you've never been a teacher, you have no understanding about how much work teachers actually do and about how much stress they are under on a daily basis and how important those breaks are so that the people that we entrust with educating the future of our country don't get burned out. When you are responsible for 150 young lives, you are not only their teacher, you're also their counselor, their mentor. Sometimes you're even their surrogate parent. And all of that responsibility can really be a very heavy load to bear. Now, I am not just saying that teachers, they're the only ones who experience stress in their occupation. There are many occupations which cause stress. And even those of you who are retired, you are not immune from those stresses and burdens. There's financial worries that burden us. There's physical ailments that burden us. And I think many of us are also burdened and stressed by the state of our nation and the state of our world. Those things can really weigh us down. And the reason I share all of this with you this morning is because of the woman in today's gospel message. She's not given a name. We know her only as the bent-over woman. And for 18 years, she has been bent over, unable to pick herself up. So what was it that she was suffering from? Well, as we heard in the words of integration and guidance this morning, some have speculated that maybe she had a scoliosis, but the truth is we don't know. What the story does tell us, however, is that she was afflicted with a spirit of infirmity, which means she was suffering from a weakened spirit. We know body, mind, and spirit are all connected. If you have a weakened spirit, you may have a weakened body. Okay? It says she's suffering from a spirit of infirmity. Now, in preparation for today's homily, I do what I do every week. I pray each and every morning with the gospel passage. And this week, each and every morning, I was praying with that bent-over woman. And every single morning, I was literally moved to tears. And the reason I was moved to tears is because I know this woman. I know her personally. Because right in our midst, people right here in this very church have been suffering a spirit of infirmity for many long years now. They're worried, they're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, and they're right here in our midst. The bent-over woman is right here. Our friend, the writer John Pavlovitz, who came and visited us at Douglas UCC last fall, recently wrote a column that said, "Everyone around you is grieving." And in that column, he wrote this: "Everyone around you, the people you share the grocery store line with, pass in traffic, sit next to at work, encounter on social media, and see across the kitchen table, they're all experiencing the collateral damage of living. They are all grieving someone, missing someone, or worried about someone. Their marriages are crumbling, or their mortgage payment is late, or they're waiting on their child's test results, or they're still pushing back tears 5 years after the death of a loved one, because the loss feels as real as it did that very first day. Every single human being you pass by today is fighting to find peace and to push back fear, to get through their daily tasks without breaking down in the grocery store or in the carpool line or at the post office. They're wounded, exhausted, pain-ravaged people, and they are everywhere, every day, stumbling all around us, and yet most of the time, we're fairly oblivious to them. I think that the writer of Luke's gospel purposely did not give the woman in today's story a name. She's nameless because I think, just as the people back then were oblivious to her, we, as John Pavlovitz said, are oblivious to all those around us who are burdened and weighed down. And I also think that maybe she's nameless because she's meant to represent us. She's made to represent all of us who are walking around each day with troubled minds and with heavy hearts. But here's the good news of today's gospel. The bent-over woman experienced healing. As we just heard, she was touched by the power and the presence of the Christ, and it said she is loose, lifted, and freed from her ailment. And so if she is us, that means that we too can experience that same lightening of our load. We can be freed, loosed, and lifted up by doing what she did, by touching the power and the presence of the Christ. This all happened on the Sabbath. Now, as we heard in today's gospel, the religious leaders of the time, they criticized Jesus for this healing taking place on the Sabbath. It's so strange. You would think that here they saw right with their own eyes a woman who had been bent over for 18 years. She's been healed in their synagogue. You would think they would rejoice, but they don't. Instead, they criticize Jesus because this should not have happened on the Sabbath. And Jesus calls them hypocrites because Jesus understood that there is a law that is greater than man-made laws. And that law is the law of love. This healing took place through the law of love. And Jesus also understood that they were hypocrites because if they were true religious teachers, they would know that the Sabbath was made for healing. That's what the Sabbath is all about. It's a time to heal. I've shared with you before, the commandment to honor the Sabbath doesn't mean to go to church on Sunday. That's not what it means. The Sabbath is a time of rest. We are commanded by God to find time to rest, to do nothing. That's how we honor the Sabbath. The purpose of our doing nothing is to heal from the burdens and the day-to-day stresses of our lives. That commandment is important. We are to take time for ourselves, to honor ourselves. That's not selfish. It's God's commandment. We are to take time out so that we can heal. Now, the word Sabbath is where we get the word sabbatical. And teachers in the summer get a 3-month sabbatical. And that's important because they need that time to rest, renew, recharge, so that they can begin another school year. Now, most of you know that I am being granted a 3-month sabbatical next year. And I am so grateful to all of you for that amazing gift. Now, I am no longer responsible for 150 high school students, but I am responsible for 150 congregants. And so I am really looking forward to this time because I don't want to burn out. I want to continue to do this for many more years. And so I'm grateful so much to all of you for allowing me that time where I can rest and renew and recharge. Now, starting in January, I am going to be going to a spiritual retreat center in Idlewild, California. It's all the way up in the mountains. And the name of the retreat center is called Spirit Mountain. You can look it up on the internet. It's a beautiful place. And at Spirit Mountain, I am going to have my own little one-bedroom hermitage. It's called Hildegards Hermitage. And it's named after Hildegard of Bingen, who was the medieval Christian mystic. And Hildegard wrote all the way back then. She said, "Holy Spirit, you are the fire that warms us. You are the salve, the balm that soothes us. And you are the ointment that heals our hearts." I love that. And she was so right, because that spirit of the Christ is the light, the balm, the ointment that heals and restores us. The woman in today's gospel, the bentover woman, she received healing and restoration from coming into contact with that spirit, that presence and the power of the Christ, and it happened on the Sabbath day. All of us can experience the same healing. All of us can be loosed, lifted, and freed when we rest. And in that period of rest, we bring our worries and our troubles and our burdens to the light, and they are transformed and healed. Now, I understand not all of you are fortunate enough to take a 3-month sabbatical. But you know, you don't have to go to California in order to ascend Spirit Mountain. And you don't have to go to California to enter Hildegards Hermitage. Because the Hermitage is God's dwelling place within you. And Spirit Mountain is that place of higher consciousness that you go to when you truly honor the Sabbath. So that's what I want to invite you to do this week. I want you to find time each and every day to honor the Sabbath, even if it's only for 15 minutes. To find time that's just all about you, so that you can just rest in God's embracing arms, God's healing embrace. When we honor the Sabbath, we are healed, renewed, and restored. For as the scripture tells us, only in God will our soul find rest. Namaste.